Let's pretend this is your house. 6 miles to one side of your house is the library. On the other side of your house is your friend's house, which is 3 miles away from yours. In this illustration, how far is your friend's house from the library? Well, since his house is 3 miles from your house, and then your house is 6 miles from the library, that would be 9 miles. What if your friend's house is on the same side as the library? How far would his house be from the library now? Well, if he lived 3 miles closer to the library than you did, and the library was 6 miles from you, then he would only have to travel 3 miles to the library. This whole concept is very similar to the number line. A number line is a straight line where numbers are marked at equal intervals. At the center is 0. Numbers to the right of 0 are positive, like 1, 2, and 3. Numbers to the left of 0 are negative, like -1, -2, and -3. Think of the plus and minus signs as directions. The plus sign points to the right, and the minus sign or negative sign points to the left. So if you saw -3 or -3, what direction would it be from 0? Well, since it has the negative sign, it would be on the left side. Now what about 5? 5 doesn't have a sign, but it's positive, so it's the same as writing +5, which means that it's on the right side of 0. Some numbers do not have written signs, but this just means that they're positive, and it's the same as if you put a plus sign in front of them. Numbers further to the right are larger than numbers to their left, so out of -3, 0, and 5, 5 would be the greatest, and -3 would be the least. Looking at this example, which is further from 0, -4 or 4? Well, this was a trick question. They are actually the same distance from 0. This is called the absolute value. The absolute value is how far a number is from 0, and it's always positive because it represents distance. A trick to finding the absolute value is just to drop the sign. In this example, if we drop the sign on the -4, we get 4, which is the absolute value of -4. Notice that even though -4 is negative, it's still +4 steps from 0. And yes, these two lines are the notations for the absolute value. So the absolute values of both 4 and -4 is 4. Now, let's start at 0, and imagine you take 4 steps to the left, then 6 to the right, and finally 4 to the left again. Where would you end up? Let's figure this out step by step. So starting at 0, if we take 4 steps to the left, we land at -4. Next, moving 6 steps from the right, from -4 brings us to 2. And finally, taking 4 more steps to the left, from 2 brings us to -2, and that's our answer, -2. Now let's represent these movements as a math expression. The first step is to go 4 steps to the left, which can be represented by -4. The minus sign tells us to go left. The next step is to go 6 steps to the right, which can be represented by +6. Remember, the plus sign tells us to go right. And finally, the last step is to go 4 to the left, which we can notate as -4. Altogether, we have -4 plus 6 minus 4. When we calculate this, we get -2, which matches our final position. Okay, now let's try this. Given this expression, 5 minus 4 plus 3 minus 2 minus 1, let's find where we end on the number line. So the first thing in this expression is 5. Now, remember, if it doesn't have a sign, it's positive and has an unexpressed plus sign. So that means it's 5 to the right. The next step is -4. The minus sign shows us that we need to go to the left. This puts us at 1. Our next step is to go +3. There's a plus sign, so let's go 3 to the right. And we're at 4. Now, we go -2. So that's 2 steps to the left, which puts us at 2. And finally, we have one more step, which is -1, 1 step to the left, and we're at 1. And that's the answer to this expression. 5 minus 4 plus 3 minus 2 minus 1 equals 1. Okay, now let's do some practice. Given this expression, at what number do you end up? See if you can solve this on your own, and then come back and we'll do it together. Okay, we start at 0, and the first step is to move 2 to the left. We go left because of the minus sign, and we're at -2. The next step is to move 4 to the right since we have that plus sign. That puts us at 2. And the final step is to move one more to the right because of the plus sign, and we end up at 3. And that's our answer. Great work. Let's try another example. Can you write the expression that tells us to go 5 to the right, then 2 to the left, and finally 1 to the right? Pause and see if you can do this and come back to see the answer. Okay, we start by moving 5 to the right, which we can write as plus 5. However, because it's the first number, it's also okay to just write 5 without the plus sign, since numbers without signs are understood to be positive. Both work. The next step is to go 2 to the left, which means we need a minus sign. So if we add that, we get 5 minus 2, or plus 5 minus 2. And our last step is to go 1 to the right, which we can write as plus 1. And that's our expression, 5 minus 2 plus 1. Okay, let's try another example. So for this example, I want you to solve 3 questions. The first is, which number is closer to 0? The second is, which number is greater, -4 or 5? And the third question is, how far are they from each other? Okay, so pause and see if you can figure this out on your own, and then come back. Okay, the first question is, which number is closer to 0? Well, to find the distance to 0, we can use the absolute value, which means we just drop the signs. So the absolute value of -4 is 4, and the absolute value of 5 is 5. 4 is closer to 0 than 5. And on the number line, we can see that -4 is closer to 0 than 5. So -4 is the answer to the first question. The second question is, which number is greater? Remember, numbers further to the right are greater than numbers to their left. And we can see that 5 is farther right than -4, so 5 is greater than -4. The third and last question asked how far they were from each other. To solve this, we can consider that -4 is to the left of 0, but 5 is to the right of 0. That means you need to combine the distance from -4 to 0 and 0 to 5. That means the answer is 9. So -4 and 5 are 9 away from each other. Awesome work. In this example, our 2 points on our number line are positive numbers, 3 and 7. Can you figure out how far apart they are? Take a moment to think about it. There are several ways to determine the distance between these 2 numbers. One method is simply by looking at the number line. If we count the intervals between 3 and 7 on the number line, we see that the distance is 4. Another method is to use subtraction. To find the interval, we can subtract the smaller number from the larger number. Here, since 3 is smaller than 7, we subtract 3 from 7, and we see that the numbers are 4 units apart. Great job. Now let's consider 2 negative numbers, -6 and -4. Can you find out how far apart they are? Take a moment to try. This might seem tricky since the numbers are negative, but we can use the same methods as before. We can count the intervals on the number line, and moving from -6 to -4, we count 2 intervals. We can also use subtraction. If we subtract the smaller number from the larger number, we can find out how far apart they are. Remember, numbers further to the left are smaller, so here we subtract -6 from -4. When subtracting a negative number, the double negative turns into a positive. So -6 is the same as adding 6. This tells us the numbers are 2 units apart. A helpful way to think about a double negative is to remember that minus can mean the opposite. So the opposite of the opposite cancels out, leaving a positive. Great work. Woo, that was a lot. You did fantastic. And that's the number line. It helps us understand positive and negative numbers, compare values, and learn about absolute value. Now, on your own, at home, try drawing your own number line to practice locating numbers, comparing them, and working with absolute value. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like these, please consider liking and subscribe to the channel. If there are certain videos you want to see, let us know in the comments. Now, that's it for this video. Keep working hard and keep learning. Thank you for watching.